Jill was wondering about this whole kite thing. Jill
Uh,
was,
uh,
Yeah.
what
the
did you want
kite,
to ask, Jill?
Well, I saw a book at the library that something about a man wrote a book about how this whole thing was a hoax. Is that true?
oh, a hoax. Well, there could be a degree of the story that could be maybe a little off, slightly. Um, let's see if I recall that day in June that a thunder burst appeared in the sky. I had planned this out with my kite, my little rod on top of the kite, my key, which I use for my front door. Um, the kite was made of silk because if it was a paper kite in the rain and the storm, it would just fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Silk was great with the water. The droplets would just fall and shed off and not add weight to the kite. It would stay airborne in the storm. The string or cord was a twine that came down, and it was actually my son William, my illegitimate son William, that was probably in his 20s. And I had him run out in that field and get the kite up in the air. Once he
Well, that was really good parenting on your end, Ben. Sending
yeah,
the kid out into an electrical storm.
get out to do it. Yes, William and I had a very good relationship in our early years. Sadly, it fell apart during the American Revolution. That William got the kite up in the air. I had a little shelter that I stood in, and the at the end of the twine was the key, and the key was in a jar, and you could hold the jar and the string at the end of the string, I had another piece of soap that I would hold to keep pulling to keep the kite up. And just at the point where we were going to give up, the kite never actually got struck by lightning. But what I knew in my thinking that the sky and the air masses and clouds created the friction to create electrical charges. Those charges traveled down that twine and into that key. Right when we were ready to give up, I noticed something that was very peculiar. The string, the twine, the threads they were starting to move and resonate. The strings being wet became charged, and as I moved my knuckle toward the key, there was a little spark, like you do with in a doorknob in static electricity. That was my kite experiment. I knew that same thing, those lightning bolts, ferociously strong bolts of electricity, were the exact same little sparks that pass from your finger to a doorknob or anything, especially in the wintertime. That little spark of static electricity is the same concept of an electrical flow. And I was able to extrapolate more upon that. And my electricity experiments became sort of parlor games in the 18th century because what good was it? What could we use it for? Well, I did devise a sort of a device to spin and create static electricity and stored the electricity in almost like batteries, the Leyden jars. They were like cells. And I could save and wire them together and create electrical current. So I put a turkey in a pen made of a wood pen. I had everybody around. My idea was to electrocute the turkey because I
My
thought
goodness.
the meat
Well,
was,
that's,
the meat was much more tender than chopping its head off.
oh,
And the
cool.
that the
Jill, plug your ears.
Sounds like
electricity
the first air fryer or something.
electricity would stop the turkey's heart.
Look
The
at
meat
that. Ben invented the air fryer. He didn't even know it.
Well, what happened to the experiment was in my gabbing away with my guests, I forgot to put the probe onto the turkey and held it in my hand. And when the charge was released, it knocked me on the
No
floor,
way. Are you
Well,
serious?
I
nearly
have to say you
unconscious.
deserved that a
Yeah,
little.
that was karma there, Ben.
Much to the delight of my guests once they found I was all right.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and then, of course, my electricity experiments went into my invention of the lightning rod. So that was probably one of my best and most, what I would be most proud of inventing, because that saved
Hmm.
lives.
The lightning rod?
The lightning rod in the 18th century.
Hmm.
Now you have to think, especially early 1700s, it wasn't long before that that there were still witch trials going on, especially in my childhood in Boston. My eldest aunt was tried as a witch, my mother's
Oh.
sister.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And in Puritan Boston in those days, if your home got struck by lightning and started to burn, you were forbidden to do anything to try to put the fire out, because that was God's punishment, and you'd be damned if you interfered with that. That family must have done something to bring upon God's punishment. Well,
Wow.
Hmm.
my my life is not a very religious life, although I eventually became a deist and believed in a god and something. But all the doctrine in those days was it, the metaphysical realm did not interest me very much. I had keen interest in my observations in the world we were living in. So the lightning rod, I was able to determine from being shocked a few times that if I could get that rod on a high place like my kite, it would direct the electricity down through the wire into the ground and
Hmm.
safely pass from the roof of a building or in a house. I did not. I could have had a royal patent on that lightning rod. I could have had a royal patent on my stove and made a lot of money, more
Yeah.
money, but I refused to do that. My design plans for the lightning rod were free and public for anyone that would want to put one on their building, their home, their barn, any structure they would have. And my lightning rod saved a lot of property, a lot of death, a lot of destruction, and a lot of sorrow.
Hmm.
So
Wow,
Well,
that's
that's great.
interesting.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Franklin was terrified of that lightning rod on our own home because in my little trickery, I ran a little jumper wire off the wire coming down from the house that had a little bell, and if the lightning went down through that wire, a little bit of the spark would run cross over and shake the bell, and it would ring. Then I
Hmm.
would know the house was struck. Well, Mrs. Franklin would not hear that at all. Refused to let me keep that contraption attached to the ground wire on my
Yeah.
lightning rod. So,
Well, I don't blame her.
I thought it was brilliant, but
Sounds
somebody else.
fun, kind of.
I did, I did. So I never really knew if my home got struck by lightning from my invention
Mm.
until very late when we did some renovations, and the workmen brought me to where they were tearing some things apart and said, "Hey, Ben, look at this." And one of the nail heads that was near the wire was melted. So I knew that it had at least been struck once.
Wow.
So